Christian nationalism. So first of all, let's find out what it is and break it down a little bit. So there are a lot of definitions of Christian nationalism. Here's just kind of a working definition. It's the belief that God has uniquely blessed one nation, ours, above all others, and that Christian faith and national identity are one and the same. Let's break it down even further. What does it mean to be a Christian? Well, at its heart, to be a Christian means I follow Jesus, and I'm striving to live out his way, the Jesus way, in my everyday life. That's what it means to be a Christian. To be a nationalist, the basic definition is to promote the pride, identity, interests, and culture of your nation. But it can also mean a belief that your country is better than, superior to, other countries and should dominate them. Now, in Christianity, well, they're two different things, right? Christianity and nationalism. But when they get combined, you get this blurring of loyalty. Loyalty to Jesus and loyalty to country. And here's what I think I captured an image of this. We were at Lake of the Ozarks a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, and we had dinner, and one of the kids is like, hey, Dad, take us to get some ice cream. So we go to this cute little ice cream place, and outside the ice cream place is this flag. It says, one nation under God. You have Jesus with his crown of thorns, if you can't see all this, and then a depiction of the crucifixion. That is a perfect example of the blurring of Christianity and nationalism. Christian nationalism, by the way, isn't something unique to the United States. Countries that are predominantly Christian also are prone to have Christian nationalism, and Christian nationalism is nothing new. It's been around for a very, very long time. But for us as a nation, it's got its roots in the idea of manifest destiny. Does that word ring a bell? You remember that from high school? Anybody remember from high school history? Manifest destiny. So manifest destiny is the idea that God wants the United States to spread democracy and Christianity around the world. That it is our destiny, we're manifest to do that. That God has ordained the United States to do whatever it takes to conquer other people and nations, to spread those ideas, to spread Christian civilization, to make the world safe for democracy. And it was first articulated in 1845. So that phrase, manifest destiny, and the ideas behind it really took shape. And what happened after that, as it began to take shape, victories, war victories in World War I, the victory of World War II, were seen as confirmation that God had ordained the United States to spread Christianity and democracy around the world. But what happened after World War II was the rise of communism. The Soviet Union started to take over countries, and communism was seen as this direct threat to democracy and a direct threat to Christianity. And so that's when the phrase, under God, was added to the Pledge of Allegiance. Prior to that, the phrase was not in there. That was added in 1954. That's also when the phrase, in God we trust, was made our national motto in 1956. So in that period of time, right after World War II, the Cold War was starting to really ramp up. There was this huge wave of sentiment that swept over the United States, where America viewed itself as God's chosen people with a divine mission to export American democracy and American ideas all over the world. The idea that God chose us to make the world a better place. So up until that point, it was all about out there. Right? We were called by God, ordained by God. It was our manifest destiny to go out there and share these ideas and values with the world. But something happened in the 70s. The ideas around Christian nationalism changed. Rather than being from out there, Christian nationalism turned to in here, toward our own country. Some things happened around that time. If you were alive around that time, you'll know, because around that time, people began to believe, Christians began to believe, Christian leaders began to believe that the country had lost its way. There were some big shifts that happened. One is that Christianity was starting to lose its cultural relevance. People began to ask questions about faith. They began to have neighbors of other faiths. So there was a globalism that was happening. There were new civic policies promoting civil rights for minorities and for women. Globalism was disrupting the economies of every country in the world. The military loss in Vietnam was seen as another advance of communism into the world. And that made evangelical leaders feel like God was punishing the United States for straying from their Christian foundation. Now, this was a new form of Christian nationalism that was turned inward. And as it turned inward, it also looked backward. It looked back to the founding of the nation and said, all right, we were founded by evangelical Christians. We are founded as a Christian nation. Let's go back to that. What's the problem with that way of thinking? The problem is that most of our founders were not evangelical Christians. Most of the founding fathers were deists. Do you know what a deist is? Real quick, deists do not believe that God is involved in daily human life. Kind of the metaphor for deism is that, yes, there's a God, but God's like a watchmaker who created this elaborate watch, wound it up, and then stepped back and let it run. Thomas Jefferson was a deist, classic understanding of day. He embraced deism. In fact, have you ever heard of the Thomas Jefferson Bible? What he did is he took the New Testament, I think just the New, I don't think he did the Old Testament. He took the New Testament, got a razor blade, and cut out all of the miracles in the Bible. Why did he do that? Well, because he believed that Jesus was just a good moral teacher. He did not believe that Jesus was the Son of God. Therefore, the miracles were not helpful for Christianity. They were not important, so he cut them out. But here's what I'm getting at. Christian nationalism loves to paint the founding fathers as a mirror of their own beliefs, saying, yeah, they were evangelical Christians. And when you paint them, oftentimes Christian nationalism paints them in a way that says, all right, they were pro-life and anti-abortion. They paint the founding fathers as pro-gun and want every American to own one. They not only want prayer in schools, but want schools to teach explicitly Christian education. And even though the founding fathers introduced the freedom of religion in the Constitution, they would argue that that really only meant freedom for Christianity. So modern Christian nationalism has this idea that the closer you get to the founding of the nation, the more the American population was free from governmental interference. But what ends up getting omitted in that idea? The freedom in that time period was really only applied to white European men, and actually only a select few of them. Because until the late 19th century, if you were black, you were enslaved. If you were indigenous, you were rounded up and sent to a reservation or simply exterminated. If you were a woman, you were not allowed to vote or own property. And Christian nationalism in the United States is still subtly infused with the idea that a Christian nation is really a white nation run by men. Which is why we've seen over the last 15 years an overlapping of Christian nationalism and white nationalism. Overlapping. White nationalists see declining birth rates, and that generates fear that the white majority is losing ground and minority populations are increasing. They see that as a threat. In the last 10 years, something really strange has happened. There's a steadily increasing number of people who identify themselves as evangelical Christians, but have no connection to Christianity whatsoever. What does that mean? Well, it means that Christianity has become a cultural identity, and more people in the United States see that the country is the focus of their worship. Now, when this infects the church, what happens when that concept infects the church? Then pastors feel empowered to promote a version of Christianity that emphasizes the elements of Christian nationalism. And at the same time, they ignore the teachings of Jesus that undermine their vision of Christianity. So, for example, they might say Jesus was a capitalist, even when Jesus despised materialism. They might say Jesus condones violence against enemies of the United States, when in reality, Jesus was heavily pacifist. They'll say Jesus deplores homosexuality and abortion, when he never addressed those in the Gospels.